Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of the Screen.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. Would you like to give a little introduction of yourself,
Yeah,
Eli?
actually, sure. I'm Eli Zang. The head of sales and monetization for Xumo Advertising.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we're going to really focus in a little bit on FAST and kind of get your perspectives on the evolution of FAST, the viewing experience, and how streaming has continued to evolve. FAST has evolved from being a really more niche streaming experiment back in the origins in the early days of CTV into one of the fastest growing segments that exists today. One of the questions that I'd like to focus on is how advertisers think about premium content and FAST and audience value and all of that. Given that FAST has developed and significantly over the last few years, what do you still see in the market as misperceptions about FAST and how things have changed? If you want to wax poetic about it, that would be great.
Yeah. No, this has been a topic that's come up a lot especially in the last, 2 years, I would say. Because, even several years ago, as you know, a lot of agencies and advertisers have always kind of deemed FAST as not premium
Right.
because there's repeats on Fast, and there's usually people on premiering like big show premieres on Fast. So, and that was kind of like the definition, right, of like what is premium, what's not. But I think that's really changed the last year and a half because of people have realized that viewers really love going to Fast, and they really pay attention to this kind of content, right? Because Fast has grown so significantly, more than doubled in the last 3 years, and really kind of what is premium has changed, right? And so we've seen on the Zumo side that, according to T-Vision, that people pay 20% more attention to the content and even the advertising on our fast channels as compared to most of the other streaming platforms. So I'll take an example as Law and Order, for example. We
Great
um,
show.
launched. Yeah, I
I
mean,
love Law and Order.
people can watch Law and Order all day
Oh my God, I
long.
know. Have done.
And
Yeah.
that is premium scripted content,
Yeah.
right? And so, and when we launched Law and Order channel on Zumo, it became quickly, within a month, became one of our top channels, right? And now it's, I think the number one channel across most fast platforms.
Wow.
And so, when you're looking at that as and that people are paying attention to that content,
Right.
they're watching that content. The content is scripted and it's premium scripted content, and then you compare it to a premiere on the platform that may or may not get a lot of viewership at all. Um, what is actually now premium, right? And so I would say, in my opinion, I would consider this to be a lot more premium. You get the attention, you get the scripted content, and you get the viewership, and you get the stickiness. That to me is premium. So, so I think the idea of fast being not premium has really changed, and a lot of fast is actually really premium.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different points in there that I want to dive into, but I think one of the things that you're hinting at is really consumer consumption changes, right? So as CTV and as streaming has evolved, the behavior of the consumer has really evolved and changed. Although you could argue in some respects it's kind of re-emerging as like old linear behavior, right? And I think to your point, that conversation around like what's premium, connecting those dots a little bit. How do you think about audiences, right? So do you think about are you trying to like, how do you think about content versus like audience from a premium perspective? So to your point, like the engagement of what's premiering or what's being watched, with the Law and Order example is a perfect one. You could argue that that's a premium experience, right?
Yeah.
But I would love to understand a little bit how you think of the interplay with the audiences and what you've seen with Zumo, with
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think people feel very comfortable with fast, which is why they come to fast, because they are seeing more choices in fast. And so exactly like you said, on Xumo, we have a lot of first time streamers from a audience perspective. A lot of times they don't even know that they're streaming, right? They're watching content as they were on television,
Right, exactly.
on cable, right? And that is the environment they're comfortable with. And you know, on the Xumo side, it's really interesting because
like Law and Order is on again.
yeah,
Just like
yeah. You know, and it's really kind of funny because like, you know, on but not just that, right? You know, we have the Ion channel, for example, and Ion basically streams their live stream that is on cable on the fast channels, right? And a lot of the WNBA games, the live WNBA games are on fast channels now. We're seeing more live sports and fast. And so I think you're seeing a lot of this, you know, cable viewership shifting to fast and discovering fast. In fact, you know, on our side, on the Xumo side, we have our owned and operated app, Xumo Play, that's on, you know, all the OEMs and platforms. But we're also integrated into a lot of different places, including Xfinity. So our channels are actually integrated into the Xfinity kind of viewership guide.
Right.
And so you'll see a Bravo channel, and then under the Bravo channel, you may see a 24-hour Housewives channel, which, you know, I watch obviously all the time. And people will flip to the channel and not realize that they're actually, you know, streaming fast,
right?
But they are, right? Because it's not about finding fast or not. It's about finding content and about finding the channel. And so, and that's kind of what we're trying to do here at Xumo, right? It's, you know, we don't restrict people to just the app itself.
Right.
They can find our channels in all the different places where we distribute our channels, including Xfinity, including, you know, on, you know, all of Google TV. Google TV free plays 100% of their kind of native channels are actually Xumo channels. And so it's really where people find themselves. And so that's really the idea. It's creating that television experience and making it accessible.
So focusing on that viewer experience, right? Like what you just talked about is super interesting in that it's this shift, this consumer behavior shift within seconds between linear and streaming within the same platform, which is kind of an interesting, you know, convergence of the industry, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's one question. How do you view like linear, and you may have already answered that, but like linear versus streaming and having that experience? Does it matter from your perspective, right? Like, or is it sort of just meeting consumers where they are and where they want to get, you know,
yeah, it's
consume
exactly like you
content,
say.
right?
Yeah, exactly. As you mentioned, it's really about meeting where the consumers are and you know, how they want to consume the content, right? Because I think, you know, right now there's Netflix, there's, you know, there's Peacock, there's all these other premium like SVOD services, and even, you know, other you know, AVOD services like Tubi. But when you kind of like lay everything out, right? So there's so many different kind of subscription and even non-subscription VOD services now, but there's just too many choices, right? And so, and people, I think a lot of people are now feeling very overwhelmed with the amount of choices that they have. And so when they go to a fast channel, it's curated for them. And especially if there's a premium IP, like, you know, the Housewives channel or even the NBA fast channel or any of these fast channels, people feel comfortable because they know what to expect, right? And it's curated all for them based on the content and the topic and the genre, whatever it is, or news fast channel, right? And so, so I think this is why a lot of people are coming to fast channels, because it's really meeting them where they want to consume it, and but also how they want to consume it, right? It's about kind of that content curation.
Right. So actually, to that point, we talk a lot about content. We talk a lot about premium content, what the definition of premium is. We'll come back to the advertiser side and how you address that conversation with advertisers. But what you're sort of touching on is a little bit more of the discovery. We always focus on the ad experience for the viewer, right? And making sure that the experience is the best for the consumer. but we don't often think about discovery. We don't really talk about it too much. But I would love to get your perspective on how you think about that. And then because we're in Cannes, beautiful setting that everybody can't see at this point.
It doesn't suck.
But I have to mention, no, I mean, it's like, but I would love to hear about discovery and your perspective on discovery. And then I have a follow on to that as well. But
yeah, I think discovery and curation is really, really important, right? Because, I think that there's just so many different, there's too many choices out there, right? And so Tubi itself has hundreds of thousands of titles on AVOD, right? And then you have the Peacocks of Disney Pluses, the Netflix, every one of these platforms have, hundreds of thousands, millions of titles that are on demand, and it's requiring for people to search. And I don't know if you experience this, but I certainly have. I sit down to look for something to watch sometimes at night, and I've allotted, maybe an hour, and then, I'm always hoping to, find an episode of something that I want to watch, and then probably 30 or 40 minutes later, I'm still searching for things and watching trailers, right? And so I think that content curation is super important. I think this is why a lot of people have come to Fast, is because the curation is done for you.
Right.
On Xumo, we actually kind of keep the number of channels, like unique channels, to just over 300 channels. And so we oftentimes will sunset channels that don't get a ton of viewership or are not well, because we want to curate premium channels that people really want to gravitate to. And we've used machine learning and AI to help us really curate this personalized experience for our viewers, so that they can have the best experience, right? They know what they're going to watch, what they've watched before. They know what kind of content that they love, and we kind of then curate that back to them. And so I think that's become a much better experience, and why people come back to Fast so much, and why it's so sticky.
Right. The angle of AI, right, and sort of a lot of companies within ad tech, and I guess the tech world, for the last 10 years, for a long time, have been using a lot of machine learning. It is essentially AI, right? Like that's like there's obviously an evolution in that perspective, but I didn't realize, and I would love for you to talk about. So the viewership experience is personalized using machine learning, AI, etc. And so you limit the number of fast channels. Do you alter the mix of fast channels based on those recommendations and the personalization for the viewer, for the household? Or is it a little bit more like, here's the pool, and you might adjust how that content is sort of portrayed or delivered to the viewer?
It's kind of a little bit of both, right? So we keep the number of total fast channels. I mean, still 300 to 400 fast channels is still a lot of choice.
So,
but I would say
it's not
a lot,
infinite, but it's
not infinite. It's not millions.
That's right.
But I think with that, we surface different types of fast channels based on what we learn about people's viewership patterns. And so it's about curating the kind of curating the curated fast channels and content, so that people are really getting what they want, and quickly, right? Because what we don't want for them to do is spend an hour kind of surfing and clicking and wasting time. People really want to get to their content, because time is really precious.
It also lends to, and sort of bringing it all back towards the advertiser, right? So how have you sort of focused your conversations with the advertiser, not just on, okay, this is fast has developed how you think about premium, but also the experience? Like what are they asking you for in your conversations, or what are you highlighting mostly in those conversations with advertisers?
Yeah. It's really, on the Xumo side, we've really kind of, are at this pivotal point, of, our growth, right? Because I think that, we've been doing a lot of education in the last several years around, the importance of Fast, why people are coming to Fast, and why people are watching Fast.
How fast is premium?
How fast is premium? And there are a lot of different kind of platforms that carry fast, right? Samsung TV Plus, LG, Google TV, Roku channel, and Xumo, right, and so on and so forth. And so, and a lot of advertisers are saying, how do I buy this, right? And so, how do I buy fast in the most efficient way? Because there are more fast channels and there are more platforms that carry fast channels now. And a lot of advertisers don't necessarily want to or can or have the budget to make partnerships with every single fast platform and split it up, right? And so it comes down to audiences. And so one of the really kind of amazing things that we do, and it's something that we've really recently been more vocal about, is that Xumo plays a very unique role in the fast environment where we power a significant number of premium fast channels across every single platform, right? So as I mentioned, we distribute all the fast channels on Google TV Free Play, but we also do that in certain aspects for on other fast platforms, every single fast platform actually, including Xfinity and even Roku channel, Samsung TV Plus, LG channels, and we're the only people from an advertising perspective that are able to reach every single device from OEM and device perspective based on the way that we distribute these channels and syndicate them, right? And so
and then you're responsible for the monetization. So when you're
Yeah.
syndicating, so across these, you're responsible, your team is responsible for the monetization sort of regardless. So you have this different perspective or like breadth of perspective, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we see how different platforms have different viewership patterns and on different devices. But a single channel, a single NBCU channel or another channel that we may distribute or syndicate may sit on various different platforms, and we're able to reach a very wide amount of audiences across all the different devices. We're the only ones that do this, right? And so so it really puts us in a very unique position and allows, and so we've been working with a lot of the advertising teams and a lot of the agency holding companies on these fast POVs for their advertisers, and helping them kind of unpack all the complexities of fast and CTV, and allowing them to kind of like be a premium partner with a wider reach,
right,
and getting them those kind of unique audiences across where they need them.
What do you think? What do you see advertisers getting wrong? And I should be fair. What do you see them getting right? But what do you see them getting wrong in that context, right? Like that you see over and over, and you're like, hey guys, everybody chill. We gotta talk about this. Like, what is there a theme that emerged, or maybe it's changed over time? But
yeah, I think that just as how people's kind of buying patterns have changed since CTV and AVOD and streaming have and fast have kind of come into the space. I think that there's going to be a shift, or hopefully a shift, in the way that advertisers buy fast and CTV, right? Because in the past, everyone, as I mentioned, everyone's just making individual partnerships with every single partner out there, and now there's just so many, it's impossible for an advertiser to buy every single one of them. And also there's a huge overlap, right? And so a channel that's on a Xumo device that could be, or Netflix that's on Xumo, that's on Roku devices, could have different implications in terms of the audiences, right? And so what's been really great is that we've been partnering a lot with you guys on the Innovid side and the Mediaocean side to help dedupe a lot of these audiences, right? And at the end of the day, it's about reaching those incremental viewers, right. And just so happens on the Xumo side, we have one of the largest reach of those viewers via fast, and also because we have our own and operated devices as well as content, we have a lot of unduplicated unique audiences that people are not reaching. So it's been a really great partnership with you guys because it's helped us tell that story in a real way. Since Innovate sees the entire kind of breadth of all of those, audiences via the way that you guys serve those ads. You can see,
it's like this is a layup, and it was not intended.
No, I mean, it's
not intended.
Not at all. By the way, this is not an ad.
Yeah, I know, totally. I was like, this is amazing. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You see, like, to your point, we talk a lot about fragmentation, both in the industry and on this podcast now and in the future. But like fragmentation in the ecosystem, and you're hinting at it from our perspective, it's one of the things we sort of solve for because we see across like an advertiser's entire campaign across all channels, all formats, blah blah blah. But it's really fascinating because you're basically telling a similar side of that, like an opposite side of the coin from the publisher lens, which is literally perfect. So
we love to work with you guys and have you guys grade our homework because you guys are neutral,
right?
And you see the entire kind of ecosystem from the advertiser perspective. And we are so confident that we reach those unique audiences because we have the reach and we have our devices that are unique to us. And, if advertisers not targeting us, they're not getting those audiences.
Right.
And we can tell that story with, our partnership with you guys. So it's been a really great journey and it's been a lot of education. And I do think that eventually it will change the way that people see and also buy CTV and FAST.
In the viewer experience and thinking about premium to the point, right? Like unique reach, unduplicated reach, unique reach. It's almost a parallel version of premium versus fast or premium and fast, right? Understanding how consumers engage with the content.
Yeah.
And it's not always the same per each sort of medium, right? As SVOD, AVOD, fast, they serve different purposes. And so to a large extent, it's the same concept of unique reach, even though we're looking at a household level. It's a similar concept, which is I think a nice way to bring those things together.
Yeah.
Thank you again for being here. One, I guess, last question. The industry changes so much. You've been in the industry for a long time. Looking back, or I guess having a crystal ball, what do you think people will be surprised the most when we look back and be like, of course this happened, or of course this was what, the way that it occurred? Does anything pop out in your mind in that regard? Like, we would have known this, or that was clear from the start.
Yeah. I think that, I think we've seen this with a lot of different things, right? Because we as humans like to overcomplicate things and overthink things, overanalyze things, right? Who would have known? And, I think looking back, people will realize that the concept, when it comes down to it, is still very simple. It's still the content, right? It's still the content that drives the audience, right? And so it's not necessarily about the premiere of a new piece of content, or how it's delivered, or what platform, or the brand of the platform. It's about the content being a good piece of content. I watch Golden Girls every single night, and it's still relevant,
right? Content
because that content is amazing, and I laugh my head off every night because it's amazing content, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if there are no more premieres of, Golden Girls, but I still love every single episode of Golden Girls because it's so funny.
That's an amazing,
right?
It's so perfect. That's it. You just gave me a question that I'm going to ask everybody. Like, what do you rewatch all the time? So it's Golden Girls. Is that your number one rewatch?
I would say Golden Girls. I would say Golden Girls is probably one of my, secret, passion that I watch before bed, and I pay attention to it because, it's just so witty, it's so funny, and all the jokes are still very relevant. And kudos to those writers.
Yes, oh my
right?
God. Yeah.
And so again, I think looking back, we're going to say, you know what, we did all these crazy things, we put all these billions of different platforms, and at the end of the day, it was really about the content. And so, and so I think that's really going to be, coming full circle.
Yeah.
And, and it's really the obvious thing that we will all kind of, have an aha moment about, right? And say, duh.
Yeah.
Why didn't we think of that before? Well,
it's such a great point.
It's here.
Yeah. That's like, it's a great point. And, as people can't see, but all of these yachts, I'm like, that's why Larry David has probably one or many of these yachts, because people like me watch Seinfeld over and over and over and over and over again. But it's a really good point. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. This is great.
Thank you for having me.
Always good to see you.
You too.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Mediaocean Podcast Network. For more of our shows, visit www.mediaocean.com/podcasts.